So we were going to do a little chat today, not terribly long, maybe 20 minutes or so, but we were having really good chats privately in our other groups about entering our birth seasons and the transition kind of out of our reality into a more liminal space and the preparations that come with that.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. And so I thought that would just be a really cool conversation to have because you're in that space now. So sometimes that can look really different, like leading up to it or even preconception or ideas of what that might look like versus really being in it. And so first, I guess maybe you just want to introduce yourself a little bit. My name's Sondra. I'm a birth worker as well, but you have a unique background because you've actually graduated the RBK school, correct?
Yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know, my name is Taylor. I am a radical birthkeeper, birth witness I like to use as well. And yeah, I also I don't have any previous experience in like the medical system. So I was never a doula, like I've never attended hospital births. I was never like a medical midwife. So I don't have any background in that. I'm just literally outside the system. That's where I've started. I don't even like to use the word career because that feels disconnected from what I actually do. And yeah, I guess other than that, I'm also an intuitive astrologer. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I'm a wife. I'm very pregnant. And yeah, I guess that's kind of covers like what I do and where I kind of roam around in community-wise. But yeah, I've been birthkeeping for just over a year now. And a huge part of my, I guess, education, if you want to call it that, or mentorship, actually brought a lot of healing towards my previous birth, which was 10 years ago, which was in the system, like a completely medicalized hospital birth. And it was only through my education and through doing the RBK school that I brought a lot of healing and a lot of awareness that I didn't previously have to the birth of my son. And it just kind of very synchronistically happened that I became pregnant again, which I think I had a lot of clearing to do before I could bring another child through my womb. So yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at and who I am.
When did you graduate? Was it the first round? Was that a couple years ago?
No, I believe I'm the fifth cohort. So
Oh, okay.
I graduated May. Yeah, so just under a year, or just, yeah, you know what I'm saying, just over a year ago. Yeah, May 2022 is when I finished.
That's awesome. So one of the interesting things I think, and I mean, I think anyone that has dove into the birth world, especially having already maybe had a pregnancy or a child, and then like diving into the birth world really deeply, it can just be like a total 180 from what we either previously experienced or what we previously thought we were capable of or what birth can be. So I think that was one of the things that, after coming maybe the other side of the RBK school and having actually dipped your toe into serving women in this more women-centered, holistic, mindful way, how have things shifted for you since that first experience, and how are you kind of going into, how were you going into this pregnancy, and then how were you going into your pending birth?
So yeah, so while I was in the school, actually, a lot of what was coming up in our training and in our teachings, I had already 2 years prior to that really started diving in and kind of analyzing my prior birth experience. And then it only deepened while I was in the school. So, we would be in a class talking about something and I'd have like a really emotional reaction because it was bringing me back into that space of like, oh, I didn't receive that, or I didn't have that with my son, or so on and so forth. So the other part to this too is that I already live like a very holistic life. And it's interesting. I always find women a lot of times, um, they live a super holistic life. Like my son's never been in a public school. We're not in the Western medical system or involved that way at all. Just the way we nourish ourselves, the way we run our household, like everything is very much, I guess, radicalized from the very substandard way of society, if you want to put it that way. But the last piece, I always find women are kind of like not lacking, like it's their lack, but just because it's so ingrained in us is birth, right? Like I know some of the most holistic women still go give birth in the hospital because that's what they think is like what's available to them. So it was really felt for me like one of those like last pieces of the puzzle that like I had to put together to kind of really claim my sovereignty and like really step outside of the system fully. So while I was in the school, I did a lot of like trauma debrief work with my birth. I was already like doing all of that. So that was, I finished that in May. And then I was witnessing and attending births during the summer. And then I got pregnant at the end of September. And so I had already put in my mind, I already knew that there was a baby coming through when I was in the school because I could just feel it. And I knew that it was also a part of my healing and my reclamation of self. And also, I think a huge part of this birth for me will be how I go forward serving women as well. But yeah, so end of September, I found out I was pregnant, and I already had decided that I would be free birthing. I had already decided that I would be having a wild pregnancy. So that was kind of already all made up in my mind. So there wasn't even a shift of like, okay, I got pregnant and maybe like I went and got a midwife in the system and then kind of pulled myself away. This pregnancy's been completely wild, completely unmonitored, if you will. And I also, in the way that I approach birth, I think it's so important to have, I think it's better for women to not have anyone in their birth space if they can't have the exact person or woman serving them that they want to. And for me personally, with where I was at in September and who I knew in the community and who I didn't know, for me, it just felt better to free birth. Um, because I don't think it's as simple as just finding a wise woman in your community and welcoming her into your home. I think it's so much deeper than that. So yeah, so that's.
I think that's a huge thing. Like the way that you just worded that is that it is truly better to not have anybody than to not have somebody who is very deeply aligned with what you are looking for and your values.
Mm-hmm.
It is just too easy to have somebody, usually accidentally, like no one's going into this work maliciously, but accidentally sabotaging what your vision is for your experience if they're not very truly aligned with and I think it's incredibly difficult to find that person after you're already pregnant. Like if you don't have an established relationship with somebody, it's truly difficult to form that relationship within the, handful of months in your pregnancy to get to that place of really truly understanding each other. So that is a area in the birth world that I don't know, probably very few women get that experience of having someone that's truly aligned with what they want. And I wish it was more. And I think this is where maybe a bit of a tangent, but like this idea of like the community midwife, long ago, this woman would be touching families all throughout their lives from birth to death. She would be involved in all of these aspects. It wouldn't be some stranger that you hire the moment you find out you're pregnant, right? It's this completely different paradigm that we're missing, and that's the idea of the wise woman, is that she would be somebody that we know and trust and have gotten to know through years and years and years, but it's just that's not really what's out there in our Western world right now,
No,
unfortunately.
no, it's not. And actually, it was interesting because I attended my best friend of like 20 plus years now, her birth back last summer, at the beginning of August. And it was such a transformative experience for me because I have this 20-year relationship with this woman. This woman is like my sister. I love her so deeply. And to be able to serve her and be in that space and be able to hold that space for her, really also helped me to anchor in. I'm very specific about who I serve as a birth keeper. I actually don't like, I don't really advertise if, like, I don't really advertise online. Like, I don't have a website right now because really the women that I want to attract are women that are already in my community and women that I already have an established relationship with, because I think it's so different when we get into the energetics of birth and how vulnerable you have to be. And this is what I was going to say as well, as I know myself so deeply at this point that I knew that if I had a woman, even a beautiful woman, a beautiful wise woman come into my home who spent my pregnancy with me and did all the right things and served me in all the right ways, you are so raw and cracked open in that birth space and so vulnerable. I don't like being vulnerable in front of the closest people to me. So I know myself as a woman, having somebody come in that I don't have a 20-year relationship with. I mean, I'd feel vulnerable with somebody like that, let alone somebody who I just met this year or somebody who's just been serving me in my pregnancy. So I think that's another really important aspect for women to understand is like, in order for physiological birth to unfold, in order for you to be able to have that really spiritual experience that I think a lot of women are looking for when they are birthing at home and when they're calling in that spontaneous physiological birth, or that sovereign birth, if you will. It's not, yes, there's fears. Yes, there's things that can happen. Yes, there's things that can unfold. But I do think it's more of a deficit to have somebody in your space where you're not completely comfortable having there. And I've served women where, even because I keep this in my mind very potently when I am serving a woman, just about every time I've shown up at a woman's house, whether it's in the beginning of labor or whatever it may be, I usually have to leave and come back because their labor stalls. Because it's like, even though I've built this beautiful relationship with them and I've done all of this inner work and reflection and all, whatever encompasses that relationship for her and I'm still a stranger. I'm still a stranger at the end of the day. I've built a relationship with you over your pregnancy, but I'm still not somebody who is in your home every day and is with you. And that's why I really love the term family birth as well, other than free birth, because like that's what I'm envisioning for myself. Like my husband is going to be with me. I'm not going to be alone, but it's my family and my, core bubble, so to speak, of who will be with me, which I'm comfortable with in my own home. So
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. It's a really interesting contemplation. And even if women aren't in a space where they do want to birth alone or just with a spouse, I think just being open and cognizant of this concept is super important. Like just because you're going to choose, even, women who want to enter into the system, like you shouldn't put the blinders on just because you are going to opt into a certain kind of scenario. If you're opting into inviting someone that's pretty fresh in your sphere, just be aware of that. Be aware of what that means energetically. If you're opting into going to the hospital, you do you, but please just be aware of what that means for you, so that at least it's not just, put these blinders on and hope for the best and go with the flow. Like you hear this, go with the flow. Well, that's not always,
yeah,
that's really not
I
always.
feel like there is no flow when that occurs, right? Because it literally goes against the nature of how birth unfolds. Do you know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I just think it's really interesting. It's always like, oh, find the right birth keeper, find the right practitioner, find the right midwife, find the right this. And it's like, truthfully, if you can't find, like, if you don't already have somebody in your mind right now that you'd be like, I want this woman to be with me in my birth portal, then like you probably shouldn't have anybody there to begin with. So
And so obviously this has been a big shift for you. Has a lot of that opinion come from doing the RBK school, or has that come afterwards, integrating that schooling, that practice?
Some of it came through, like through the RBK school, just because of how, I mean, it's called like the Radical Birthkeeper School, I think for a reason is, and they are usually, for anyone who's familiar with them, like they are pretty on the quote unquote outside of even what I would term like the holistic birth community, states or perceives around birth. So yeah, part of it, like a huge part of free birth is the fact, of that power that women hold, that like you're made, you, you're made to birth. Like you don't, even the like community midwife is like, it's not needed. So there's that aspect, but it wasn't until I had attended certain births, and then attending my best friend's birth, where I was like, the light bulb went on, where I was like, holy fuck, this is like completely different. It's just like just the comfortability and just even the intuition, which I consider myself a very intuitive woman to begin with, but just even the intuitive connection between her and I during her birth, and what she needed, and her really wanting my presence there, yeah, it was just completely different. And I kind of went forward from that space of like, I really don't want to be contacted by, just, I don't want to be promoting myself out there and like serving all of these women who don't know me. I would rather serve women that have some sort of concept of me or have some sort of connection to me at the very least, so that we already have a foundation of where we're starting off at. So mhm.
So yeah, we obviously touched on a lot of the energetics of creating your birth space. What about a little bit just on the physical stuff, the more practical, like real life application stuff? What are you doing as you're entering into your own birth portal? Birth is coming soon. What kind of things are you kind of preparing for yourself that maybe we don't always consider?
Yeah, so I think one thing, obviously, like on a physical level, really, again, I guess this plays into energetics and the physical of like spending your pregnancy really tapping into what that birth looks like for you. Like, and I think there is a duality in the sense of, I think part of the birth that we like envision is partially like ours to manifest. And that I also believe that our birth brings the medicine that we need as women to expand and evolve. So really just trying to tap into that vision. So like, for example, I've always envisioned myself giving birth in my bedroom where I am right now. So physically preparing that space to make it what you need it to be. So that I kind of did throughout my pregnancy. Like that was its whole kind of journey unto itself, and really creating that vision that I was holding in my head. But physically wise, um, what have I been up to? I will say the last week I've really noticed myself shift. Um, I'm not like as grounded in reality anymore, and I feel very, I don't want to use the word irritated, but like I'm just not as engaged with as many things. Like everything's kind of irritating me. Like I like don't really, I'm ready to kind of like tap out and not be here. But also, yeah, I think there's the natural mammalian aspect, which I mean, I know everyone, like even mainstream birth talks about nesting, but I think there's like a sacredness to that, and like really honoring where your body is calling you to like clean up and organize and prepare. Like you are preparing your birth space the same way like a wolf mother would prepare her den. Like, so it is important that you meet those needs within yourself so that you can feel like at peace and in sync with your environment. And I think really just tapping into your body on a physical level. Like there was a while there where I didn't really have much of an appetite, and I kind of had some stress about it, where I was like, I really should be eating a lot more than I'm eating, but like I just wasn't hungry. And then over the past 4 days, it's like I'm ravenous. Like I just want to nonstop eating. So really holding that space for myself physically. Um, Other things that like I've done is I have, you know, like a box in my hallway that my husband and I have kind of put together where like everything for the actual physical birth is, and like he knows what's in there and I know what's in there, and everything is kind of like compiled into one space. So that's like a physical, what seems like a mundane task, but yeah, I feel like there's also just the aspect of, because I'm a birth keeper, I've, witnessed births. I've heard so many birth stories where I'm like, yeah, I don't want that in my birth space, or I do want that in my birth space. So just really kind of like fine tuning that for myself as I come up to giving birth. Um, yeah, so like I have like a birth box. I kind of have everything set up that way. And also on a physical level as well, just really maintaining communication with my partner, like with my husband, and going over things that, I know, but obviously he doesn't know by, like I know because I've been trained, but he hasn't. So just going over certain things, going over like variations of normal, and like, just talking about, making sure I'm nourished in birth, and like just really keeping that line of communication open, and going over things as they come up, I think is also really important, because I do think there is a lot of women want to free birth, or, have these physiological births, and their husbands are super supportive, but then it's like, are you also doing your due diligence to like support your husband in the role that he's playing in your birth space? So like that's been a really key thing for me, especially as we like come closer and closer. So yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to ask, is how has that dynamic changed at all or shifted a little bit? I think it naturally would shift, right, regardless of how involved your husband or significant other is going to be. But because you have together decided that he's going to step into this role of a really involved, supportive person during the birth, has it shifted more so than you think otherwise, if you were to have like a wise woman with you who's kind of taking on some of the roles that he might now be stepping into? Or because it's really coming from an intrinsic place mostly, you don't find yourself like overly discussing things with him, or like really, like, do you feel like you're doing prenatal classes with your husband? Giving him
No,
prenatal classes,
no,
or
I
no?
don't feel like I'm doing prenatal, but this is again, I think, where it comes back to, and I mean, you're gonna laugh because I talk about this all in our private chats, but like radical self-responsibility, and also self-awareness and awareness of who your partner is. Like nobody gets anywhere in life being dishonest with themselves. So if you have a partner that's like super fucking anxious and like super nervous, like you need to be, no one's saying you can't have the free birth that you want to, but go into that with that knowingness and then prepare accordingly. My husband and the way he is, um, he handles high stress situations really well. We've been together for, 12 plus years. So there's also just that knowingness and intuitiveness that he brings to me as well. Um, so yeah, I don't feel like I've been giving him prenatal classes. Like, I mean, I have all the resources. I have the complete guide to free birth by Free Birth Society. I have all of those things. I have 1,000,001 birth videos that he could be watching. Um, we haven't really done all of that. I've asked him if there's certain things that like are coming up for him, that we can discuss openly. And then it's honestly been very spontaneous. So like if we're just having a conversation, like I've just mentioned to him, like, you need to make sure that like you're offering me water or electrolytes or whatever I've decided. I want to make sure that I have a mug of bone broth like ready for me very shortly after I give birth. Like there's like just little things that we've gone over, that are important to me, specifically. And then just going over things like, it's very normal for women to go in shock after birth. Like I might be super shaky. So like, here's something that you can do, and just providing that wisdom, but also, and then just going over what physiological birth entails as well. So just like, I don't need you to tell me that I'm okay every 2 seconds. I don't need you yapping in my ear. I need you to just like really getting him into that space of like, you're really just serving me as a witness. And I just need you as my anchor in this space. Like if I need something from you, you'll know. Do you know what I'm saying? So no, I don't feel like I've been going over like a million and one things. It's just kind of been in like talking here or there. And again, I also know myself very well. And I've had other very physical, like very intense physical experiences outside of birth. So I've also like, we've also had conversations around that because he's had to navigate those with me as well. And so I've kind of related the two back and forth, like, even to the point of, you know, I don't need you with me for my entire labor. Like, I don't need you right beside me. Like, I'll probably want to be alone for a larger aspect of it, just knowing who I am, right? So, yeah, I think that kind
Yeah, that's huge. I think, I mean, I can speak from personal, like, I wish that I have this idealistic vision of what my partner could give to me, or how he could be in that space. But the reality is that might not be the person to fill that role, right? So it is super important to know the relationship and not be putting, I mean, even if you were to hire somebody, not be putting something on them that they just cannot fulfill. You're setting everybody up for failure at that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how about we'll close off our conversation because I think you've also got engagements to get to. And I don't think you're doing any work right now, but you can let everybody know, is there anywhere to find you? Are you actively doing anything right now? Any offerings? Or are you shutting down a little bit? Let us know what you're up to. And if people want to connect with you, where can they find you?
Yeah. So I am not doing any work right now. I'm very much in service to self, and in service to this baby. But I will be birth keeping again at some point. And I'm hoping that it's, you know, within the next year. I'm not looking to take like I don't take on a massive amount of births either. It's not really my flow. So I am hoping to be back with like in the year, but even before that, you know, I do birth trauma work, I do astrology work. So that's all can be done virtually and like online, which I'll be announcing when I'm ready to enter back. But for anyone wanting to connect, literally here on Instagram is probably the best way you can find me right now. I also do a super esoteric, interesting podcast with my best friend Sarah, and that can be, I mean, I don't know if I should type it. Oh yeah, type it in the comments. Okay, so
Yeah, sure. Type anything you want just so people can spell it out and they can find it.
yeah, so it's called
Awesome.
Singsters Dream On. That's our podcast. I only add that there as well to, you can really kind of get a vibe for who I am and where my mind's at, which I think is super important if you're looking to work with me. And yeah, other than that, for anyone, reach out anytime, any questions, any birth support, anything like that. I'm still very much open to that. I'm just not doing any kind of like one-on-one intense work or birth witnessing for the foreseeable future right now. But yeah.
Yeah, that energy needs to be internalized for a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's super important. Thank you for joining me today, Taylor, and we'll continue chatting. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
We'll talk to you soon. Bye.